everyone. Welcome to today's event. On this event, we'll be discussing how to find, apply, and land for SWE internships. We have a great lineup of panelists who are here to share their stories, share their tips, and their resources to help you find these opportunities. So let's get started here. So welcome again, and we're going to have our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Ryan.
Sweet. Thanks so much, Jade. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Kabir. I'm an incoming intern at Microsoft. I currently go to Texas A&M University. You can see right here. I'll drop, I guess, like a fun fact, maybe. I am currently in a co-op with the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, working on automatic collision avoidance systems for different aircrafts and rotorcraft. So if you ride on a plane sometime in the next year or two, you're probably riding on the system that I helped develop like now and over the previous summer. So that's pretty cool. And then as for my favorite tech companies, I'm incoming at Microsoft, so obviously I love Microsoft, but I'm also a huge tech enthusiast. So Apple, of course, is also a favorite tech company of mine. And then I'm also a Valorant player, so I do enjoy Riot games as well. So yeah, excited for the event. Thank you all for tuning in.
Hey, I'm Sarah. I'm a student. I'm a computer science student at UC Santa Cruz. I'm ex-Cisco and I'm incoming at Meta. Really excited to speak today. I guess a fun fact about myself is that I'm working at, or I founded a startup that just managed to secure a little bit of funding, but very bad funding.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Emmanuel Key. I'm a third year CSE major from Ohio State. And I'm an incoming software engineering intern at LinkedIn. And in terms of my favorite companies, I would definitely say LinkedIn, just because it's one of my favorite platforms to kind of use. And definitely, I also really think that NVIDIA is cool too. And a fun fact, this past summer I was at Accenture in San Francisco as a software engineering intern.
Hi everyone. My name's Anushka, and I'm a junior studying computer science at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Um, and yes, I'm tuning in from Amherst, Massachusetts. It's pretty cold here at the moment. I am an incoming intern at Amazon. I'm a software engineering intern. Um, a fun fact about myself would be that I enjoy research. So currently, I'm doing some research with the lab here at UMass Amherst, and I'm doing research on federated machine learning, so federated learning. Um, my top two tech companies would would definitely be Spotify because I love Spotify through and through. It gets me through my day. And I also love Notion. It's it's a very good, I recommend it to everyone I see. So yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Basome Bonio and I'm an incoming SWE intern at Microsoft. With regards to school, I'm a junior majoring in computer science and I currently attend the University of Illinois in Chicago. And I'm also minoring in business analytics. I forgot to add that. A fun fact about me is that I'm originally from Nigeria, but I live in Chicago. And with regards to my top tech company, I love Duolingo. Like I love the app and also their branding, like their marketing on TikTok. I think it's really funny. Like they have the big bird, the mascot. So yeah.
I love that. These are all great, really great companies. Some of them are my favorite too, and I use them in my day to day. So let's get started. For this particular event, if you have any questions for our panelists or anything as we're going through the sessions, please share them below in the Q&A chat. I'll also send a reminder about that in the chat as well. So send all of your questions in that Q&A box and it'll be answered there. And let's hop into it. So throughout this session, like I told you, we're going to break down, how to find jobs in this industry, how to apply the application process. I know one of the top questions is like, how do you stand out in the application process? We're going to talk about that, as well as just like how to secure those offers and, when you're on the job, how to go through those internships. So starting with our first question, that is really this group of questions is surrounded by the search. I would love for all the panelists to share what inspired you to pursue your chosen career path, and how did you identify and pursue internship opportunities that aligned with your career goals and interests? And I'd love to start with Ryan here.
Sure. So, I guess I didn't mention in my introduction, but I'm also an incoming software engineering intern. So that's like my career path of choice, I suppose. As far as how I sort of like landed on pursuing software engineering, it was actually a little bit non-traditional. I went to an early college program called TAMS. Those of you outside of Texas probably don't know about it, but it's basically you choose a track, you basically go to college early from school. And I was actually a pre-med student at the time. So I'm one of those pre-med to CS pipeline kids, basically. But I studied pre-med, did all my requirements, OChem and all that jazz for 2 years. And then when I was applying to colleges, I was trying to write my essay on, why this major, right? And I just couldn't write it, right? I just wasn't passionate enough about the end goal ultimately. But what I was passionate about was tech. So I took a leap and I applied for computer science and electrical engineering at a bunch of different schools. I ended up at Texas A&M, and that's what I'm pursuing now. And with computer science and electrical engineering, there's sort of two different pathways where you can go on career-wise. There's like, I mean, two broad pathways, right? There's computer science and there's electrical engineering, right? Computer science is largely software engineering, also including data science and machine learning engineering, a lot of those subdisciplines, and of course, electrical engineering, hardware engineering, power engineering, things like that. On that side, I ended up going with software engineering largely because honestly, I watched a lot of short form content, and I was like really inspired by the blogs that I watched from SWEs. Their lifestyle seemed really nice, and then also I realized that the companies that I was really interested in and type of work that I really wanted to do was sort of like on consumer products. So that's sort of what drove me to Microsoft eventually. And then sort of like talking about how I found internship opportunities after deciding that I wanted to pursue SWE. It was actually a little bit of a late start for me. I mean, I wouldn't use the word late necessarily, but I got my first internship as a sophomore. I actually didn't have an internship in freshman year. And in doing so, I was sort of like new to the whole like SWE game, as I'll like refer to it basically, which is just like, where do you look for internships? Where do you apply? How do you apply? How do you craft your resume and things like that, right? So, how I went about it was just using Reddit and resources, just like searching it up on Google, finding online communities, and asking my upperclassmen. Honestly, upperclassmen were a godsend for me because they had gone through the process on their own. They knew how to apply, how to factor your resume, and they had a lot of insights that were really helpful for me. So I made a point to join orgs around campus, get to know my upperclassmen, and then also just like join those online communities that would help sort of like funnel me into, finding these internships to apply to, and then also sort of like figuring out the pathway that I wanted to go on when applying to those. As for like particular places where you can look, I mean, I would start with LinkedIn. LinkedIn is definitely the number one place where I find most of my internships, whether that's following LinkedIn creators. I'll give a quick shout out to two of them, Morgan Young and Skylar Basco. They're good friends of mine. They post internship opportunities. I would follow creators like that on LinkedIn, basically, that share those big tech internship opportunities. You can find positions that have just come out and, beat everyone to the application there. There are other different like repositories and things like that to find internships as well. But my number one resource is LinkedIn. So yeah, there's like an overview of how I sort of ended up in SWE and what I used to apply.
Okay, great. And Sarah?
Yeah, I got into tech because I actually started coding at a pretty young age and I just kind of like continued with it. I was put in this like cybersecurity program in middle school and just continued from there. As a result, I kind of developed a more unique background, which has really helped me get internships. So something that specialized me was my networking ability, as well as computer networking ability, as well as systems ability. And so that really propelled me. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Emmanuel?
Yeah, so I've kind of always been really interested in tech and software. Growing up, I was in a lot of different um competitions. So I was in so I would be in things um like hackathons, things with robotics, so on and so forth. So I kind of always knew that I had an interest, kind of like Sarah. So once I started to apply to colleges, I kind of already knew that I was interested. So I kind of just applied and got into Ohio State and stuff. And in terms of finding internships, when I didn't have any really relevant experience, I kind of went to my career fair. So I know Ohio State has a huge career fair every year, both within the actual the College of Engineering and the overall school. So I definitely went and took advantage of those, but also I'm involved in the National Society of Black Engineers, and every year we have an annual conference where there's a huge career fair. So that's where I got my first internship as a freshman. But in terms of some other online resources, definitely used a lot of LinkedIn, um, and I also had some older friends who had also kind of been through the process, so they kind of gave me the like ins and outs of kind of the SWE application and things of that nature. So definitely try and find some older students you can really get some good advice from.
So I think I was a pretty late bloomer. I didn't always know that, this is my calling. I think I got to know that I want to do this in 12th grade when I was submitting college apps. And that was because I was in a boot camp and they taught us how to make a game with computer vision. So let's say you open up your hand, it makes a player jump, silly stuff like that. So it's kind of like I saw it and I thought it was really cool and I wanted to learn more. And then I just directed all of my energy towards it. So that's how I got a passion for tech. And particularly, as I mentioned, I'm very passionate about computer vision. I'm doing software engineering at the moment because I think it's a great way to develop the skills that you need in this industry to flourish later on. In the path I'm on currently is garner as many skills as I can, do a master's, and then kind of transition into computer vision because that's a field that requires a bit more research and learning. So that's the path I'm on right now. And I'm really enjoying software engineering. I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't really have a plan set in motion for which is just a block in my life. But at the same time, I have something that I want to follow. When it comes to where I look for internships, I have a lot of resources that I love, and I think they've helped me a lot. As Ryan mentioned, LinkedIn, I think, is one of the best because there's so many people on LinkedIn who are doing good and who are posting internships that pop up every day. And it's important to keep those influencers on LinkedIn in mind and give them a follow. Shout out to Morgan Young. I'm also a friend of hers, and she's also helped me a lot. My second biggest resource was Simplify and the Pitt Computer Science Club. So they have a repository on LinkedIn, on GitHub, which refreshes pretty frequently. And it's basically a lot about where internships are and where the market is at the moment. It's just a lot of information about what you need. And especially for international students, I am an international student, they have a little tag which says that, oh, do they sponsor international students or not? That's also kind of a big thing. So yeah, I think those are the two resources which I think are elite to be able to help you get on track to find what you need or want. I think someone said, can you repeat the name of the repository? I'm just gonna put it in the chat.
Yes,
Yeah, someone
actually,
posted
yeah,
it.
someone can, if you can submit that question, whoever asked that question in the Q&A, we'll put the answer to that there. That way, everyone, because I know there's a lot of chatter in the chat right now, so submit that question in the Q&A, and then we'll share those links that everyone is talking about. And then for Blossom, definitely would love to hear more about, what inspired you to choose your desired career path. And then I know there's a lot of questions about like where to find opportunities. We have a couple questions where we're going to answer that soon. So right after this one.
Okay. So for me, I got exposed to technology pretty early. So I actually started with HTML and CSS in 5th grade, so end of elementary school. So I was exposed to it pretty early, and that just kind of I knew that was something I wanted to do. I was also good at math. So when I found out about CS, and I realized, it was kind of a combination of both, also involving like problem solving, critical thinking. It was a no-brainer that that was what I wanted to do. And then like throughout my high school career, I just continued to like advance that knowledge, like taking classes, AP classes in that field, and also just joining relevant clubs. So that also just like, highlighted that that was something that I wanted to do. And then for internship opportunities, I would say cscareers.dev. It's a big Discord channel that has like so many people in it from all around the world. And they have a bot that basically scrapes a bunch of websites. And then anytime these companies upload like internship roles, it goes straight to the Discord, and then it shows you the information that you can go ahead and apply. And I'm pretty sure they do the same thing for new grad jobs as well. So you can take a look at the channel that's relevant to what you're applying to and go from there.
I love that. And then hopping into, so these next couple of questions are all about where to find these opportunities. And I know a few of you have shared that, but Sarah, I would love to know like what are some other places that are really great to find opportunities on or for just like students in your major?
Yeah, I 100% second the Pitt SC repository. I think something that was really, really helpful to me as a freshman, obviously when you're first starting off, if you don't have a lot of experience, it can be really hard. This website called Angel List actually helped me a lot. It was this place where you could apply specifically to startups, as well as, add a personalized message to the recruiter. And so if you're having a lot of trouble, working at a startup for the summer is a great place to start, and AngelList is a great place to apply for that.
Love that. And then Emmanuel, I know you covered a little, but what are some other really useful places that, whether it's like websites or just like, organizations and stuff, like what are some great places that helped you when you were on that search?
Yeah, so two big organizations that I really leaned on during my internship searches have been the National Society of Black Engineers, which I've been in since I was probably in elementary school. But I would say in terms of the resources, there's usually a fall and a spring conference where there's like a huge career fair where there's just companies who are trying to hire Black engineers. And one thing I would say is that even though there's not a lot of software companies there, these firms are still in software. Well, not in software, but they still hire software engineers, right? And even if they don't hire software engineers, there's still like teams and things that are kind of close to software engineers. So like say like IT or data analytics or data science. Like I know for me, my first internship was in data analytics. And even though it wasn't um say a software engineering internship, um I was still kind of coding and I was still able to kind of um paint my experience to where it was kind of tailored like towards looking like I had more software engineering experience per se. And also ColorStack is a great resource as well. It's a online Slack community for Black and Latinx students. There's an application process for it, but a lot of the Slack is just people sending opportunities, people who are offering help and mock interviews and things like that. So that's just a really great resource to kind of find internships and opportunities as well.
That's awesome. And then because I know you mentioned Color Stack, but especially for those, underclassmen who they may not be able to qualify for internships and such, what are some programs or in terms of like qualifying because like they may be for juniors and seniors,
Yeah.
what are some programs or organizations students in these fields can get involved in to help prepare them for roles in this industry, especially, those underclassmen or those who don't have much work experience? And Blossom, I would love to start with you here because I know you were involved in some.
Yeah, so the first program I was involved in was Code 2040. I was involved in Code 2040 last year, and then what the company did was to match Black and Brown students, so students in underrepresented groups, to their partner companies, and basically just like, help you skip the initial resume screening and kind of get to just the technical interview part. but they've changed our model a little bit now this year. So what they do is just prepare you for the interviews. So they host a lot of workshops talking about, how to apply, how to get into these roles, and actually how to excel during your internship and convert those internships into like full-time or return offers as interns. And then another program I was involved in is Microsoft Explorer. So this is an actual internship, and I, oh, I'm so sorry. Was Microsoft Explorer, and I was a SWE and PM intern. And what that is for is geared towards, it's an early career program geared towards first and second year students. It is open to everyone, but I know that their target demographic is underrepresented students. All paid, it's 12 weeks. You get to explore both software engineering and PM. And at the end of those 12 weeks, if you do well, you're given a return offer and you're able to pick if you want to specialize in SWE or PM. So in my case, that's what I'm doing, going back as a SWE intern. Um, and I would say about Microsoft Explorer, the way I actually got into it was that the recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn. So as much as LinkedIn is good for finding resources, it's also important to optimize your LinkedIn. Anything you achieve, put it on there. And this recruiter reached out to me after my freshman year. So I really didn't have that much experience, but all of my involvement on campus, I was putting it down there. So I guess that was something that helped, leveraging my leadership experience to be able to work on a team.
Yeah, awesome. And then Emmanuel, I would love for you to answer. And then I saw another question came in for you about like how to join NSBE and all that. So
Yeah.
mhm.
So if you're at Ohio State, you can actually just I can give you my phone number kind of offshore and then yeah, but in terms of joining NSBE, I think you can just at least here at Ohio State, it's probably different from chapter to chapter, but I'm sure that you can just show up to any of their events and then and then just ask any of the e-board members, and I'm sure that there may be some kind of dues or something like so for us it's like $10 or $15, something like that. Um, but yeah, so in terms of some organizations that I'm in, I've already talked about it, but the National Society of Black Engineers and Color Stack, those are some good orgs that kind of helped me to get into the industry. But in terms of things, uh, besides those orgs, in my first 2 years, I was involved in the AI club here, so the artificial intelligence club. So I was able to kind of meet some people to kind of do some open source projects with, which I got some good projects out of to put on my resume, even though I didn't have any prior internship. Um, yeah, even though I didn't have any prior internships, so that kind of helped me to build my resume without having any actual internships, and that helped me to get my first internship as a freshman. So I would say just any kind of programming club in terms of like AI, cybersecurity, even competitive programming. Um, those are just like great opportunities to kind of just build your portfolio without having any actual experience.
Okay, awesome. And then and I know we've shared a lot of resources in the chat. So, I mean, on the call. So definitely check the chat to see some of the resources that we've shared for underclassmen, where to find internships, all of that. And we're heading into the next section of this, panel discussion, and it's all about just like preparing for the application, how to apply for the roles that you've now found, how to prep for those interviews. And starting with Sarah, how important is it to tailor your resume and cover letter for specific internships? And do you have any advice on crafting effective application materials?
Yes, this is an amazing question. I actually believe that, the resume is really important and obviously, however, a lot of people have a lot of really fixable mistakes that are stopping them from getting interviews. So first of all, make them one page. You would not believe how many people don't make them one page. Use a latex resume template. These help you look really, really professional, and they're used kind of as like a subtle flex among like tech companies and like bigger universities and stuff like that. And then finally, make sure you have your resume be ATS scannable. So your resume will actually rarely be seen by a real person before it's seen by a machine. So you want to make sure that the machine can look at your resume and then ensure that you have all the right keywords and skills so that you can actually get it to look to get it in front of a person. So I don't remember the exact name, but there's a bunch of online websites that replicate ATS scanners. So if I were, trying to better my resume, I would upload it to an ATS scanner and then iterate from there. And finally, something important to remember is that your resume will be on average only seen for 8 seconds tops by a recruiter. They actually did a study on this. Recruiters don't really look or read that deep into it. So when you're making your resume, make sure to include things that are important, but remember that it's also kind of a situation where you need to figure out how to convince in a very short time somebody that you're smart. So you have to put biggest names at the top, most impressive things at the top. Make sure it's eye-catching, make sure you have statistics and numbers. If you go to a really great school, put your school at the top. If you have good experience, put your experience at the top. If you have good projects, put projects at the top. Yeah, I think that's it. And if you are specialized in a field, for example, cybersecurity, networking, systems, make sure you have multiple different versions of your resume tailored for these different specializations. So, if you have done a lot of ML and a lot of networking, these are kind of different. So make sure to have 2 different resumes for these 2 different jobs. Personally, I don't really write cover letters, but I assume they can't hurt. But I also assume that applying to, 50 places with no cover letter is better than applying to 10 places with a cover letter, because in this market, it is a numbers game.
Yeah, awesome. And then Anushka, what advice do you have there in terms of just like tailoring your resume and your cover letter to applications and, advice on creative, effective, attractive application materials?
Yeah, so I'd like to echo most of the things that Sarah said, because I truly believe that latex resumes are godsend. Whenever you look at them, you just get a good feeling, right? Like if you look at a latex written resume, you'll be like, okay, like this person is stepping up the game of it. It's just how it looks. Another very important point I like to mention that a lot of people don't do, from what I've seen, is quantify your bullet points. And by quantifying bullet points, I mean, how many people did your project help, or how many people did you reach out to? How many people, or what's the numbers? What level of efficiency did you achieve after doing that project? So numbers make it seem real, like in the sense that you are going to put in a number and you're going to put in the statistic that you got, and it just makes it so much more efficient and so much more a person can relate to it. So numbers are something that are important to put on those bullet points. Keep those bullet points short. Keep them, don't brag on for sentences about what you did, how you did. Honestly, go to the Harvard and Stanford lists for resume keywords. They're excellent. I honestly prefer the Stanford one more. What else do I have to say? Okay, yeah. Also, make sure that you're not bragging on your resume. One thing I've seen is that people have a bios about themselves, which may come off as a bit adamant or throwing off, in the sense that people continue to talk about all of their achievements, and it doesn't really speak about you as a person. It speaks more to, I guess it just comes off as arrogant. So I'd like to keep that in mind. And I personally am not a fan of bios in a resume. I feel like cover letters are there for that. And one last point about cover letters is that there's another friend of mine who got a job because the recruiter said that you submitted a cover letter, and I have not seen cover letters in a while on any application. So like, it depends on situations, it depends on people. I always try to put in a good cover letter, and there's a lot of templates out there. I would generally just go to career services, get everything at your campus, and get everything checked out before I proceed with any application, of course. And make sure you put keywords from the job description posted online to your resume as well, just to make it ATS scannable. But yeah, that's all I got.
I love that. That's very useful. And if you can share that Stanford list, I know you just mentioned with like either interview question or the resume in the
Yeah,
chat, I think that would be super helpful. And then
of
going into
course.
our next question that's all about interviews. How do you all prepare for your interviews, especially technical interviews? What are some key things to research before the interview? And what are some of your favorite questions to ask? So let's start with Ryan here.
Great. Sounds good. So I'll also weave in an answer for one of the questions that I saw in the Q&A channel, tips to tackle the behavioral assessment. This sort of like plays hand in hand with like technical interviews as well. First, I'll just talk a little bit about like the interview process, just really briefly. For tech companies, generally the interview process is you apply. That's obviously the first step. After that, there is a resume review, which is where these resume tips to pass the ATS scanner and get your resume into the hands of an actual recruiter or an actual person, hiring manager, is important. After you pass that resume scanning step, a lot of the time you're going to be facing an OA. What is an OA? An OA is an online assessment. It's basically a problem set that you're taking home or you're doing on a platform like HackerRank or on Code Signal. And it's essentially just a list of questions that the company has curated for you to answer in code or sometimes multiple choice, depending on the type of position that you're applying to and the company's preferences. And that's just like for them to get an initial assessment of your skills. A lot of the time, they're not actually going to be reading the code that you submit to these OAs. It's mostly just how much did you get correct. So to practice for these OAs, I'm going to drop a resource right now. It's probably not the first time you've heard this, and it's certainly not going to be the last time. You guys need to be using LeetCode. So LeetCode, everybody saw it coming. LeetCode is basically it's a technical question bank platform essentially. You can make an account on there for free. You don't need LeetCode Premium. I would suggest it more if you want to practice company-specific questions, which I can get into in the Q&A section. But basically, you make a free account on LeetCode, and they have a bunch of the most common questions and also question patterns that you'll be asked during technical interviews. If I was to give any like one piece of advice on how to pass or crack the technical assessment, it's grind LeetCode. And if you're looking for other resources outside of LeetCode, I would recommend solving similar questions on HackerRank or maybe getting into competitive programming, because that'll help you build up your technical problem solving abilities and also help you sort of like tackle problems on the fly, like during an interview. Obviously, at some interviews, they might just rip a problem straight off of LeetCode and ask you, like to sum, for example, which is a classic LeetCode problem. Or they could ask you a little bit more of an abstract problem, maybe something with a little bit more business logic in it, something like relevant to the position. And in those scenarios, I would say doing competitive programming really helps because you're sort of tackling like word problems, if you will, for those types of technical problems. Outside of that, books, if you're into reading technical prep books, cracking the coding interview, again, nobody's surprised hearing that name. I would recommend finding it online for free. It's on GitHub repositories. Probably shouldn't be saying this online, but go ahead and look for it. Try and find it for free. Don't purchase it, but it is an excellent review or an excellent resource. I've read it front to back. It's, I would say, equally as helpful as LeetCode, but the most of the value that you're going to get from that book isn't necessarily reading through the like large chunks of like, how's the interview going to go? How can I like solve these problems? It's technical problems on the thing. And, to some extent, solving problems written down, like even though that's not a very common interview format for interns in particular, some companies will still have you do that. And it really helps you build up your sort of like technical problem solving methods and, the process that you use to tackle a problem that you're seeing for the very first time without just throwing code into it. And especially without having help from your IDE, which you likely won't have like during a technical assessment. So I kind of got sidetracked from like the process of a technical interview. Or from the process of like an interview stage, basically. So you apply, you get your resume review, you get an OA, an online assessment. Once you complete that, you'll probably move on to a phone screen with the recruiter. That can be behavioral. It can be maybe a light technical question. Following that, generally, this is where it varies company to company, right? You're either going to have a technical assessment, which is just a collection of technical problems that you're doing with either a hiring manager or somebody on the team, or an interviewer that they've outsourced at a company like Carrot, for example, or it's a behavioral round or some hybrid of the two. And this is where I'll get into answering the question in the Q&A section, which is how do you ace the behavioral round, right? So if you use technical questions from LeetCode to crack the technical interview, where do you find the behavioral questions from, right? There isn't a bank of behavioral questions the same way that there is for LeetCode, at least not one that's as infamous as LeetCode is. But I will say that the best way that I've been tackling preparing for behavioral interviews is essentially searching up the company name and searching for behavioral questions. You can find questions, I believe, on Glassdoor and other places where previous interviewees will share the questions that they were asked during their behavioral interviews. And at least something that I've found for big tech companies in particular is that they tend to draw from the same sort of like bank of behavioral questions each time. You're not going to be asked the same ones candidate to candidate, but they're generally going to be the same sort of questions. And yeah, just getting a friend and having them like, while you're driving in the car, right, ask you a behavioral question, you just casually answer it, right? It'll help you answer these questions on the fly, sort of build your stories. And here is where I'll drop like the one last sort of like tidbit that I have that you probably already heard of. But it's the STAR method. So use this to prepare for your behavioral questions. The STAR method is basically a situation, task, action, response. It's sort of like a framework for basing your answers to behavioral questions on. Recruiters and especially hiring managers will be looking for this format in your responses. So yes, you don't have to use it. Yes, you can use a variation of it. But most of the time, what I've heard, especially from the recruiters that I've spoken with, is that they will actually wait to hear your STAR points, right? You obviously don't want to say this is the situation, this is the task, right? Make it smooth, but look up the STAR method. I'll drop some resources in the chat about that. But yeah, I would recommend utilizing the STAR method and pre-preparing those answers to the questions that you can find online. But yeah, those are my interview tips.
Hey, awesome. And then, so I guess like, because I feel like we covered a lot in this particular question about how to prepare for interview and those resources. And I know we're going to share some in this chat, but starting with you, Blossom and Emmanuel, how did you stand out during your application process? And what do you think helped you stand out when there's hundreds of applicants for roles?
Mhm.
We can start with Blossom here.
Sounds good. So I would say my biggest advice when it comes to standing on roles is to personalize yourself during your interviews. So, for example, when you're asked a question like, why do you want to intern at XYZ company? It's typical for people to say, I love technology, I love the products, and I want to work there. But I would say, think about the other things that the company does and try to, gear your answer towards that. So for me, at Microsoft, I said that I was interested in their volunteer program, right? I'm heavily involved on campus. I do a lot of charity work, and I would love to be able to scale interests like that on a bigger scale, right? Working at Microsoft. So that's something, say something out of the ordinary, because that's what's going to help you to stand out. Things like being, yeah, so there are a lot of things that you can do that a lot of people are also doing. So just think of things that would make you unique, and specialize on that, and also leverage that in the workplace. So like I said, my volunteering, I also use the fact that I work on teams. I've led programs, that's leadership, worked on teams, that's collaboration, and you're going to be doing a lot of that, right, in the workplace. So just try to leverage the unique activities that you do. And yeah.
I love that. And then Emmanuel, what are some tips that you like? What do you think helped you stand out during the application process?
Yeah, so I would definitely say some things that kind of helped me out was that my experience is kind of like wide. So I have some past experience in software engineering. I have some experience in data analytics. So I would say just my kind of like just my like I have like a wide breadth of experience. I guess, but also beyond that, I'm also in a lot of different orgs, which all of which are kind of focused around computer science. So I think that that really shows that I have like an actual passion for it, because if you show that you have involvement in like two or three orgs that are all focused on engineering, that are all focused on software engineering, it kind of just shows that you have a genuine passion, and I think that that kind of shows to people who actually reading through your application, right? So I think kind of if you just have a genuine passion, and you're kind of well involved on campus, and you have some and you have some leadership um positions, I think that kind of uh helps you to really stand out for sure.
Okay, very, very helpful. So, and like I mentioned, as we're going through this call, like we're sharing all these resources, all these tips, like any books and stuff, we are dropping them in the chat. So make sure you check there. And we have one more question before. I've seen a lot of questions were submitted from you all. We are definitely about to address them, but one final question I wanted to ask would be, before we get to the live Q&A, is what are some green and red flags to keep watch of during the application and interviewing stage? And for this one, I'll have Anushka and Sarah answer. So starting with you, Sarah, what are some green and red flags to keep in mind of?
Is this like green flags for the company or for
Yeah, like
us?
good things are like when you're going through that process and you're like, okay, this is good. And then like red flags was like, I actually don't want to be a part of this. You guys are sketchy.
Mm,
Like, what are some things and just things to keep in mind as students are going through that application process and in the interviewing process?
yeah. Um, I think for startups, you should definitely be wary. Make sure that it has at least a sizable enough company size. So you could look them up on Crunchbase and figure out if they have funding, if they have an acceptable amount of employees. I would say for me, that would be like 50 or 100, at least when I had no experience. Um, for big companies, I would honestly just take it if you can, even if you were to see red flags. I feel like maybe this is bad advice. However, I think it's important, especially in this market, for people to get their foot in the door. So, for example, I did an internship at Cisco last year. My team was pretty absent because they were very busy, had a lot of tech debt. But despite that, it was still a great experience. Other than that, if you're deciding between multiple offers, just pick the place you feel like you could have the most professional development, as well as, do you like your manager? Do you like your team? Are you interested in what you do? Like that's really important, especially if you're a third year and um, where you work this year could possibly determine where you work after college.
Hey, and then Anushka, before we hop into the live questions.
Right. So I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of international students. I do see there's a lot of international students in the chat, and I think we can all relate to some things that are happening in the market in correlation to us getting jobs. A green flag for you to apply to an internship, first of all, is if they specifically do not mention in their job description that it's only open for US citizens or residents. That's number one key. Do not apply and do not go into there. I just kind of wanted to mention that before I get into the answer, but I think that's important for people to know that it's going to be a waste of your energy to apply there. When it comes to companies that I think are red flags and green flags, or the interview process where I can see some red flags and green flags, one red flag for me is recruiters who are not responsive. Well, it does happen. It is what it is. People do have lives, but I do want to mention that if a recruiter is not as responsive to you, I don't particularly think it's the best place to be, because you are spending your time, you are spending your energy applying to a particular place. And I think you should feel respected as a candidate as well. So that's a red flag that I think you should avoid. And one thing to also remember is that rejection is redirection, in my opinion. So that's something to keep on the lookout for when it comes to terms of people not listening to you, people not responding to you. But yeah, and a couple of green flags, in my opinion, is when recruiters and interviewers show up on time. They respect your time, they value you as a candidate, you have a great conversation, you get to know each other during an interview, right? And I feel like that's as human as you can get. All you're doing, it's having a conversation. Yeah, well, you're getting interviewed, but at the same time, you're trying to get to know each other. You're also trying to see if you're a good fit for that company, and that company is a good fit for you. So as Sarah mentioned, I think it's important to see where you'll professionally develop yourself more, and that can lead into personal development as well. That should be your number one key priority in this application process. So I think these are some red flags and green flags that I follow through fully.
This is very helpful. Thank you all so much. So we're going to start digging into some of the submitted questions that you all have shared, and something that I would love for our panelists to do right now, because I know a lot of people have asked in the chat, is for the panelists to share their LinkedIns in the chat so everyone can connect with you and follow you and share and see as you share your stories. So for the audience listening, the panelists are about to share their LinkedIns in the chat. But hopping into our first submitted question from the audience that I thought was really good, and I would love for you all to touch on, is what is it, what has the experience been like as a person of color in tech?
I think as a person of color in technology, it's first of all, it's important to remember that technology is one of the biggest fields that is more accepting to people of color. And it's important to realize that now we're wanted and we're being scouted and your surroundings are way more diverse. But at the same time, there's always the fact that you're neglected as well. So keep in mind that it can be discouraging at times, but you're as powerful as anyone else, and people are on the lookout for you. People want you on their teams. People want diversity within their teams. People want different experiences, different backgrounds, different ways of living, and people want to learn from each other. So I think it's improving, and I feel like definitely don't let yourself be discouraged by the things you hear, because I try to look at things in a positive manner, and I try to and I think I try to learn from them. And technology is way more diverse than we think it is, and I think it's a great space for us to learn. That is also one of the biggest reasons I'm in this field myself, because I do feel accepted and I feel wanted, and I feel that there's great things to come.
I love that.
And if I could add one thing, sometimes, sometimes, in software engineering, it can kind of feel like there's not a lot of us. But I would say one thing that I really like to do is be active in a company's ERG. So I know at Accenture there was a African American ERG, which I was very active in for my whole summer, and that really made me feel more comfortable and more at home, I would say. And it really also, even beyond just feeling more comfortable, I also just got to meet so many people who even now like just like to call me and text me and just see how I am, and so it's just like a great way to also um make connections. And ERG is a employee is a employee resource group, which is essentially just like, I mean, kind of like a smaller organization within a company where people of certain backgrounds can kind of meet and just host events. So I know at Accenture this past summer, the Black ERG had some events for Juneteenth, and really just things like that. So that really made me feel a lot more comfortable, and I was able to just meet more people just of my background.
I love that. Yes, ERGs are very, very useful, and I know a lot of companies they're open to interns when they're there for the internship. Okay, so we can hop into the next question. I guess another really good question I saw, because I know we talked a lot about sharing where to find internships, but I saw a few people ask, like, is it too late to find a summer 2024 internship? Like, I know we talked about some of those resources, but like, what are your thoughts there? And anyone can hop in here.
I can kind of start. So it's definitely not too late. I found my first internship literally in like March. So literally like I got home after my internship, or I got home after the career fair, and I probably started like a month and a half after that. So it's definitely not too late. I would say just don't be scared of applying to perhaps non-tech companies, I would say. So like so even for a first internship, it doesn't have to be at like Apple or at Google. Like for me, my first internship, it was at a energy company, which was in Birmingham, Alabama. So it wasn't the most fun experience, but it was definitely like a great first internship, and it kind of helped me to get my foot in the door to tech, I would say. Because after my first internship, it just got 10 times easier just in terms of um, getting interviews. So my advice, if you don't have one yet, definitely be very proactive in career fairs. Keep applying to places on 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 a line. And at career fairs, if you are a freshman, one thing that I did was that I went to every single company, and the first thing that I would ask after I said hi, my name is Emmanuel Key, I'm a first year, yada, yada, I would always ask if they have any opportunities for first year students, and if they say no, there's no point in really trying to keep on talking, right? So I just say, okay, well, thank you for your time, and then let's keep it moving. It isn't a big deal. Um, Definitely just be very proactive at career fairs, and it may be intimidating at first to really go up to these company reps and stuff, but I would say the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it also helps if you kind of have a loose like script, but not a like very tight script. So it sounds like you're almost just reading off of a paper, but kind of just having something like, okay, I'm gonna talk about my name, my major, my grades, and my past experience, and then just really just go from there. So
And does
Just to
anyone
add
else?
to what Emmanuel said, I don't think it's late at all. Like, I mean, a lot of people do already have their offers from the bigger companies, but there are always small companies hiring like later in the semester. I know personally for me, my freshman year, I got my summer internship in like April. So if I could do it, like you can do it. It was a smaller company. It was like a small ed tech company in Chicago. But I mean, I was still able to leverage that experience moving forward in my college career. I would say definitely go on Indeed and apply. Now I know like Indeed does have like some sketchy jobs. Just be very like careful about where you're applying to. But a lot of the smaller companies, for example, like where I worked my freshman summer, I got my job on Indeed. So a lot of the smaller companies that don't have LinkedIn accounts would have job postings on there. You just have to be vigilant that they're legit places. They're not trying to scam you or anything. And yeah, another opportunity is also research, talking to your professors if they have people, research labs that are open. If you can't get an internship, research is still somewhere to gain work experience. So.
Okay, great. I know if you have mentioned just having personal projects, and I also saw a lot of questions about this too, but what are some, for students who want to have personal projects or just want to include projects to have in their portfolio, what are some examples of some really good ones to have?
I think I can answer this. I think I answered this on the chat once, or the Q&A, but I think a couple of great projects to have on your resume because they demonstrate your ability fully through are, in my personal opinion, number one, data visualization. These projects are good for your resume, in my opinion, because they show that you have an ability to manipulate large amounts of data and display that onto a dashboard. Simply put, you have the ability to understand data, work with it, and demonstrate a useful finding, which is why I think data visualization is important. The second one would be AI ML projects, primarily because there's so much going on in this field right now. There's so many things that we're learning. There's so many things that we can do. I think I remember while I was interviewing for Amazon, my recruiter and my interviewer, they were very impressed with my federated learning project, and they wanted to find out more. By no means am I an expert, but I could still talk about it a little bit more because they were interested in finding out what it actually is and how things work. A lot of people aren't aware of what stuff like that is, so be sure to put that. And the last one I think is just a full stack dashboard. Projects like Pomodoro, simple like dashboards that you're making. They're really good in demonstrating your understanding of full stack, distributed systems, and just API endpoints, back end, front end, the connection between the two. So take classes that maybe help you make those projects, like take software engineering classes, take classes where you're learning, let's say web programming. I'm in one of those classes right now. So try to align the classes you take with projects that you can come up with yourself. And remember to mention also that you're working on in a team. So they know that you have the skills to collaborate and work with people and get something up and running. So that's all I have for those three things that are really helpful.
Yeah, awesome. And does anyone else have any tips and advice about just like working on personal projects?
I was going to say one thing is to um take a look at the class projects or the projects you've done in class and elevate them. Because I know for me, my freshman year, it can be very overwhelming to work on side projects. So take a look at like a class project you did, probably like in a 100 level class or 200 level class, and look at the ways you can improve that project to make it a little bit bigger. So for me, I had built a web crawler my freshman year, and um all that did was just, scrape a website, return the links, and then I was able to then build a dashboard that showed like the most common links that were being, found, or the most common links, what were the longest links, the shortest ones, things like that. So just add your own twist onto it. And I honestly feel like it's fine to put in your resume, especially when you're just starting off, because big side projects can be overwhelming, especially if you don't have that much experience. So.
Hey, Emmanuel, I know you
Oh
wanted
yeah. If I could add one thing too, one thing that really helped me out too was going to hackathons. Because I would just because all those are just like competitions where you just like create a project in like 48 or 72 hours over a few days, I guess. And that's just like a real great opportunity to like just make a really good project quickly. And one thing that I also do is because oftentimes hackathons are in groups. I really like to use those as good references in my behavioral interviews too, because I can use that say as an example of when I worked on a team and really things like that. So hackathons are really great opportunities to just build your technical skills, but also use those for your or use those experiences for your behavioral interviews as well.
Hey, and then I know you just mentioned hackathons, and someone just submitted this question in the Q&A. So any resources that you all have to share about how to find hackathons, please share in the chat. And then wrapping up, we have just two more quick questions and we're wrapping up. But another really good question I saw that came in is for the students that want to work in startups and for anyone who have experience and just knowledge about that, how can you work at startups? Are there any programs/organizations or job boards aimed at helping students get involved in startups? And then Sarah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you startups, but I would love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I love working at startups. I know it kind of sucks because they're a little less reputable, but high school I worked at two startups. First year I worked at a startup. Always a great experience because they tend to give you more mentorship, so 100% support. The site that I mentioned before, AngelList, it actually just rebranded to WellFound. So WellFound, I can paste it. Yeah, I think Emmanuel just pasted it in the chat. Amazing. Yeah, that's where I applied to startups. Additionally, if you know anybody personally, that's a great resource as well. Aside from that, you would be surprised what companies qualify as a startup. Like WellFound, Discord was hiring there, Patreon was hiring there. Um, yeah, startups are generally a little bit easier. So you can keep that in mind while applying as well.
I love that. Anyone else have any advice, tips, resources for working at startups, getting involved with them?
I this isn't I'm not in no way am I like a professional in talking about how to get jobs in startup, but I did get an offer from a startup this time around. And for me, it's a weird story. For me, it was all networking. So I was sitting on a plane, and I was talking to the person on my left, and I was talking to them about, hey, um, like, turns out they were a tech bro. And I was talking to the person, and we were sharing things, and we were talking and going on about what the market is right now, about Gen AI and stuff like that. And then they were like, hey, so one of my friends has a startup in the Bay, and they'd love for they're looking for new talent, and I'd love to get you in touch because they asked me to seek out. So um startups, I think, are more open to the idea of taking you via network, because it's lesser of a stringent process of application, in my opinion. So the set startup that I had, I did apply, and I loved it. I loved speaking with them, and it's more of a networking thing. So don't be shy to talk to people ever. You never know what can come out of an opportunity. At the time, that was my only offer on the table. So I'm very grateful that that came through. Um, and and yeah, just that, I think that's one of the pieces of advice that I have is like never stop yourself from talking to people, getting to know them, because you never know who's connected where. That's just how networking works. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I also have something really quick to add. That was like pure gold. That was just that just now. I also want to like say how important it is to like know how to talk to people. A lot of software engineers, they have the technical abilities, but they don't have the communication skills very much. And it's like important to remember, like if a company wanted to hire somebody with no communication skills but software, they could just contract someone from another country. But they hire you for your communication. So you need to remember that you're speaking as an adult now. Doesn't matter if you're still a teenager, you're an adult. Um, like when I was doing my meta interview, the back half was just entirely a vibe check. We just talked about skiing the entire time. So, and I've heard of people missing out on final rounds because they get the feedback that they're not conversational enough. So just remember, be personable, and yeah, things will be much easier.
I love that. I definitely echo everything you all say about like networking, because honestly, it's something I've noticed too, just from my perspective. Like sometimes nowadays it's not even about what you know, but who you know. And there are a lot of opportunities. Like that's why I've been really encouraging you all to connect with the people amongst each other in the chat, as well as the panelists on the LinkedIn, because you literally never know who you can end up networking with. And then next, an opportunity arises. Like I actually got this role at Way Up because I networked and I met with the RVP of marketing. So networking is so key as as an early professional. So definitely, I know a lot of people shared their LinkedIns, and the panelists shared their LinkedIns. Connect with everyone here. And I'm also going to share my LinkedIn in the chat too. But one final question that I would love for all the panelists to ask, to answer is, if there's one piece of advice that you can leave with the students today about their early careers and just how to be successful in this industry, what would it be? And we can start with Ryan here.
Sure. So my single piece of advice, and honestly, the way that I'm framing this is what would I tell myself if I could go back to when I was a freshman and just give myself one piece of advice is start your technical prep early. That's where I'm at. I think at a certain point in the process, especially when you're a junior, when you apply to certain companies, just because you're a junior, they'll at least let you sit for the interview, or for the OA, or for the phone screen, whatever it is, right? Because they want to convert you into a new grad, right? So at some point in the process, once you have that experience, or once you have that like school year behind you, it's not so hard getting the interview opportunity, right? The difficulty becomes passing it. And what's really going to make a difference is starting early on your preparation, not just for the technical portion, but also for the behavioral portion. Like Sarah was saying, the behavioral aspect of software engineering is sort of like an unsung hero. It sort of determines the impact that you're able to make on a team and ultimately on the company. And it's really valuable sort of like thing to work on, especially when you're preparing for your interviews. Sometimes the behavioral interview is what can make the difference between an acceptance and a rejection. So start that preparation early, whether it's technical prep on leak code or behavioral prep just with your friends. But that's my one piece of advice.
I love that. Blossom.
Yeah, so just one sentence: network, self-advocate, and be open to all relevant opportunities. Because I know that's basically what got me where I am today. Yeah, just wanted to reiterate what Sarah said: learn how to talk to people, learn how to pitch yourself. Any opportunity you've had, even if it's not related to tech, can definitely be, those skills can definitely be transferred to the tech industry. So don't feel like, working as a front desk employee isn't something that you can't transfer as skills, or working as a marketing intern can't be transferred. So yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is, because online, like I've seen a lot of like really um just a lot of really negative thoughts and stuff about kind of like the internship search and like the job search, so I would definitely say don't overthink it. Um and even though it may be like hard to like not stress over it, like at the end of the day, like one thing that I always told myself this past season for recruiting was what's for me is for me. So don't really so don't really worry about anything that you like haven't gotten in the past, because who knows, maybe if you did get that internship, like it would suck. Right. So I would say just try not to like stress. And one thing that I always really used to worry about too was like being at Ohio State. Ohio State isn't really like a target school, so like not like any of like the Stanfords, the UIUCs, the Berkeleys, right? At the end of the day, I feel like that doesn't matter as much, because at the end of the day, companies are going to find you if you're a good candidate anyway. So just try not to like overthink and try not to be overly negative about the industry and about the internship search, and don't be don't be I guess don't be discouraged. Yeah, that's the word.
Advice that I have for people applying for early careers. Number one, a lot of people come up to me and say that they're only open to big tech opportunities. Please don't restrict yourself to big tech. Um, to be, in my personal opinion, cutting edge innovation is actually happening in startups. Big tech is, yeah, I mean, if you want the tag for big tech, go for it, but don't let that stop you from going out of your way and trying to get with a startup, because the amount you'll learn in a startup, from what I've seen, is incredible. And one of my friends who was in a startup, I think I saw their personality change fully from um, is not very well versed with technology to a full tech connoisseur. So it's like both ends. Like you'll see a lot of personal and professional growth from startups, in my opinion. And the second thing would be, um, yeah, just I would say it's tough out there right now. So I mentioned this before, but this is a principle that I kind of used to not drive myself insane. And it's that rejection is redirection. If you have been rejected from somewhere, know that it's not it's not personal. It's not saying things about you or who you are as a person. Maybe it was just not a fit. Maybe you made a tiny mistake and they made that a big deal. There's always going to be some place that is perfect for you, and a place where you'll enjoy working in. So don't let um, things like this discourage you, and just, yeah, you can rant about it for a day and then time to get a move on again.
Yeah, I guess this is a little bit of a life hack. I'm a second year right now, so it was like my year was like I feel like this is almost everywhere where everybody will start applying maybe cog sci or data sci because computer science is really difficult to get into. You can actually apply the same thing to internships. So software engineering internships are like very difficult, very oversaturated. It can be a luck game, but so production engineering, which is software plus systems, or like network engineering, which is software plus networking, actually, like they are not feeling the weight of over competition as hard as software engineering is right now. Like my interviews that I got with my kind of networking background, I actually didn't apply. It was just like recruiters reaching out because there is like an emptiness in the space considering, how much software is booming. So definitely if you have an interest in networking or systems, I would highly recommend looking into that. Things that can help you with this is, getting your CCNA. It's pretty easy to get, but it can like on its own, people get jobs with a CCNA without a degree. So it's like having this is like amazing. And then AWS certifications. I'm sure that there's like ML certifications out there, but yeah, if you're having trouble, definitely look into specializing because it could get you a leg up, help you shove your foot in the door.
Well, thank you all today. This was an incredibly informative panel session, and so many resources were shared in the chat and in the Q&A chat. So I appreciate all of you for not only asking these amazing questions, but our panelists for gathering up all these resources and sharing with you all. For those who are interested in getting a recording of this session, I'm going to drop our email. You can send us an email here at Way Up and we'll follow up with you with that recording. But thank you all. Thank you all for being here today. It was amazing. I learned a lot and I hope you all did too.